Welcome to Mother's Revenge, where heartfelt stories touch your soul and may even bring you to tears. He is just a disappointment, Mom told their biggest client. She did not whisper it. She spoke with the easy confidence of a truth she had repeated for a decade. It was the final, crushing word in a lifetime of rejection, spoken just feet from my new Serenity Bombardier Global 6000. They had no idea I was the owner. They thought I was still sweeping floors at some regional airport. As they boarded my private jet, the Aurora Global client turned his face, shifting from corporate polish to sudden realization. Wait, this is your son's company. The sound that followed was the crystal of Mom's champagne flute shattering on the marble floor, the sound of her world breaking apart in front of the success she refused to see. That moment of devastating public vindication was worth every single night I slept on an office couch every single time they dismissed me. My name is Ryan Walker. I am the CEO and founder of Skyline Elite Charter, and to my parents, I am still the failure who could not inherit their consulting firm. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say listening in the comments or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. If you have ever been underestimated or quietly built an empire while others doubted, you hit the like button and subscribe now to hear how I finally proved them all wrong. My life was engineered, not lived. I turned 34 recently, the CEO of Skyline Elite Charter. But to the world I existed in, growing up, the only title that mattered was Walker Strategic Partners Partner. I was raised in Westport, Connecticut, a town where the sound of the hedge fund closing bell was louder than any church bell. And success was quantified strictly by the size of your compound and the prestige of your professional name. My parents, Robert Walker and Linda Walker, ran that firm. Walker Strategic Partners, a management consulting monolith, specializing in corporate restructuring. Our 6-bedroom colonial house, though immaculate and filled with furniture for show not comfort, felt less like a home and more like a permanent exhibition of the legacy I was born to inherit. From my earliest memories, the path was set a gold-plated track with no deviation allowed. Ryan, pay attention to how your father handles this call. Mother would command, dragging me into his mahogany-paneled home office before I was old enough to tie my own shoes. Someday you will need these skills when you run the company. While other kids were outside trading baseball cards or failing penalty kicks, I was internalizing the language of leveraged buyouts and sitting through agonizingly formal etiquette training. My childhood bookshelf was a testament to this pressure, more copies of The Art of War and Management Strategy than actual storybooks. Every achievement I managed to pull off was merely a prerequisite, a checkmark toward their predetermined future, never an accomplishment in itself. When I dared to bring home an A- in 4th grade math, Father did not see a good grade. He saw a crack in the armor. He immediately hired a tutor. Walker men do not get A-. He stated the words cold and final. Mediocrity is a disease we cannot afford to catch if we are to build a consulting empire. The pressure was a constant suffocating hum. Dinner time was not for family. It was a Socratic seminar on client acquisition and market penetration, forcing me to define terms like derivatives before I understood fractions. There was absolutely no room for anything truly mine. I remember the exact moment the seed of my escape was planted. I was 8, riding silently past a small coastal airport when I saw a sleek jet, a silver arrow, climbing effortlessly into the high blue air. Look at that plane. I pressed my face against the glass momentarily, forgetting the rules. How amazing would it be to fly one of those? My mother did not even drop her phone. That is just a phase, Ryan. Besides, pilots are simply glorified bus drivers for the wealthy. You are meant for greater things. The dismissal was total, but the image, that feeling of freedom and ascent, stayed with me. I started sneaking books about aviation from the public library, hiding them under my mattress like forbidden maps to a different future. By high school, the silent war between my genuine passion and their crushing expectations was almost unbearable. I played the part, acing all the business and economics courses they demanded, maintaining the impeccable GPA required for Randall University. But in secret, I consumed every aviation magazine, every technical book, learning the complex logic of the industry. When I was 16, a conversation changed the architecture of my rebellion. I was talking to Chloe, whose father, Captain Kevin Chang, a commercial pilot for a major carrier, noticed my genuine curiosity. He spent hours, which felt like days to me, detailing the mechanics and the business of flight. "You have a good mind for this industry," he told me once, the first real validation I had ever received. "Have you ever considered aviation management? It perfectly combines business strategy with technical expertise." That single conversation cracked the ceiling of the future they had built for me. I began researching aviation business programs, a secret hope building for the first time. The bomb dropped during my senior year. My father borrowed my laptop and found my browser history, a roadmap of aviation school websites like Midwest Tech University and Northern Plains University. The fight that followed was apocalyptic. "We have invested everything in preparing you for a serious career." My father screamed, his face a mask of red fury, in our perfectly arranged living room. "And you want to throw it all away on some juvenile fantasy?" My mother just shook her head, her disappointment more chilling than his rage. "Darling, Karen Mitchell's daughter just got into Harvard Business. Meanwhile, you want to waste your education becoming what, a glorified travel agent." The comparison was the cruelest tool in their arsenal. The children of their peers, Karen Mitchell's daughter, Brian Cooper's son at Goldman Sachs, the Parker twins with their national merit status, were always the shining examples I failed to reach. I felt invisible unless I was perfectly aligned with their rigid vision. During holiday gatherings, they would proudly introduce their colleagues, children, and their accomplishments, while I stood silently, my own interests and achievements unmentioned. The breaking point came when college acceptance letters arrived. I had applied to my parents' alma mater for business, as expected, but also secretly to several programs with aviation management components. When acceptance letters from Redwood State University, Midwest Tech University, and the Great Plains Institute of Aviation programs arrived, I was ecstatic. My parents were not. My father actually tore up the letters in front of me. "This discussion is over," he said coldly. "You will attend Randall University's School of Business as planned, or you can pay for college yourself." With no financial resources of my own and scholarships that would not cover full tuition, I made the difficult decision to comply with their demands, at least temporarily. I accepted the offer from Randall University. But something had fundamentally changed inside me. I began plotting my eventual independence, determined that once I had the means, I would follow my own path. College became my strategic planning phase. While I attended the prestigious business school my parents had selected, I approached every class with a secret purpose. Finance courses were not just about corporate balance sheets, but potential aviation company funding models. Marketing classes became laboratories for developing aviation service concepts. Every economics principle was filtered through the lens of how it might apply to the aviation industry. I deliberately selected electives that would support my hidden goals: logistics, management, transportation, economics, and international business regulations. My parents viewed these choices as sensible additions to a consulting career, never suspecting they were puzzle pieces in an entirely different picture I was assembling. The true game changer was meeting Professor Richard Hayes at Riyadh in my junior year. Before academia, he had been an executive at a major airline for 20 years. After a guest lecture, I lingered behind to ask questions, and our conversation extended well past dinner time. "You understand the aviation business model better than most industry veterans I know," he remarked, studying me curiously. "Why are you not in our aviation management track?" When I explained my situation, he nodded thoughtfully. Family expectations are powerful forces, but ultimately you must live with the consequences of choices made to please others. Professor Richard Hayes became my unofficial mentor, directing me toward resources, introducing me to industry contacts, and even helping me secure an internship with Summit Airways. During summer break, I told my parents it was a corporate strategy position at a transportation company, which was technically true, if significantly understated. By graduation day, I had earned my business degree summa cum laude, exactly as my parents had demanded. What they did not know was that I had also built a small but valuable network of aviation industry contacts and accumulated specialized knowledge that would serve my true ambitions. The partnership agreement from my parents' firm arrived in a heavy cream envelope 2 weeks after graduation. The offer was generous by any standard. A junior partnership track substantial starting salary and clear path to eventually taking over the family business. On the same day, I received a considerably more modest offer from Summit Airways for an entry-level operations position. The salary was barely 1/3 of what my parents' firm offered. I scheduled dinner with my parents at their favorite upscale Harborview City restaurant, dressed in the conservative business attire they approved of. They were already ordering champagne when I arrived, confident in celebrating my entry into the family business. To the newest Walker consultant, my father toasted prematurely, raising his glass. I took a deep breath. I need to tell you both something important. I have accepted a position with Summit Airways in their operations department. The champagne glass froze midway to my mother's lips. You have done what? For the next hour, I weathered their reactions. Disbelief, anger, manipulation, and finally cold disappointment. My father called me ungrateful. My mother suggested I was having some kind of breakdown. They reminded me of all they had invested in my education and preparation. This is not a rejection of you, I tried to explain. This is me following a career path that actually excites me. It is a phase, my father declared dismissively. When you are tired of working at that glorified bus station, our door will be open. Eventually, you will come to your senses. I moved out of my parents' guest house the following weekend, loading my modest belongings into my car. While my mother watched silently from the kitchen window, I found a small one-bedroom apartment near the airport, with a view of the runways rather than the manicured lawns of Westport. The next 2 years were a crash course in aviation operations. I started in customer service, learning the business from the ground up. Every spare moment was spent observing other departments, asking questions, volunteering for additional projects. While my former classmates were taking luxury vacations with their banking bonuses, I was working overtime and holidays, absorbing everything I could about flight operations, crew scheduling, maintenance requirements, and regulatory compliance. My dedication paid off with a promotion to operations coordinator after 18 months, a position that gave me visibility into the entire system of keeping aircraft safely and efficiently in the air. I lived frugally, building a modest savings account while my peers were buying luxury cars and downtown condos. Contact with my parents dwindled to occasional strained holiday phone calls. When relatives asked about me, my mother would vaguely mention I was still finding myself and would come around eventually. My father simply changed the subject. The pivotal moment in my career came through a snowstorm and a chance encounter with Caleb Morgan, CEO of Pinnacle Dynamics. All flights were grounded. The terminal was chaos, and Caleb Morgan was furiously trying to reach a critical meeting in Houston. As the operations coordinator on duty, I identified a potential solution. One of our aircraft needed to position to Houston for maintenance, and we could get regulatory approval for a ferry flight with limited passengers despite the weather closures. I navigated the bureaucratic hurdles, coordinated with maintenance and flight crews, and personally escorted Caleb Morgan to the aircraft. Most people would have just told me it was impossible, he remarked as we waited for final clearance. I smiled. In aviation, impossible usually just means nobody has found the right regulation exception yet. Caleb Morgan made his meeting and 3 weeks later offered me a position managing his Pinnacle Dynamics corporate flight division. At nearly double my salary, it was an opportunity to learn the private aviation business from the inside, and I accepted immediately. For the next 3 years, I immersed myself in the world of private aviation, learning about client expectations, aircraft acquisition, crew management, and the economics of private jet travel. I built relationships with fixed base operators, maintenance facilities, catering companies, and industry vendors. I observed the inefficiencies and opportunities in the market, quietly taking notes and forming plans. After settling into my new career, I made one more attempt at sharing my success with my parents. I invited them to dinner at a neutral restaurant, bringing a portfolio showcasing my accomplishments. My executive title responsibilities: managing a fleet of 3 aircraft and testimonials from satisfied executives. My mother glanced at the materials with a distracted air. "Well, it is nice you have found stable employment. Dear, though, being a glorified secretary for a businessman is hardly what your education prepared you for. I am not a secretary mother. I manage a multi-million-dollar aviation operation with a team of 20 professionals." My father waved dismissively. "The offer to join the family business still stands. We have had an exceptional year, and our client list now includes 4 Fortune 100 companies. That is real business experience." I left early that night, finally accepting a painful truth. My parents might never acknowledge the legitimacy of my chosen path. Their approval, which I had sought for so long, might never come. If I was going to find fulfillment, it would need to be on my own terms, without their validation. The idea for Skyline Elite Charter began forming during my time with Pinnacle Dynamics Flight Division. I noticed recurring complaints from Caleb Morgan and his executive team about traditional charter companies' lack of transparency and pricing, inconsistent service quality, rigid scheduling requirements, and poor communication. Meanwhile, many aircraft owners were struggling to offset ownership costs during periods their planes sat idle. I began sketching a business model for a more flexible, transparent approach to private aviation. A service that would combine the consistency of owned aircraft with the flexibility of charter, all wrapped in exceptional customer service and cutting-edge technology. For 6 months, I spent every evening and weekend refining my business plan, running financial projections, and researching regulatory requirements. I lived on coffee and determination, often working until 2 or 3 in the morning before grabbing a few hours of sleep and heading to my day job. When the business plan was solid, I took a calculated risk and presented it to Caleb Morgan. He reviewed it methodically, asking pointed questions that tested every assumption and projection. "The aviation business eats startups for breakfast," he warned. "But this addresses real pain points I experience regularly. What do you need to get started with Caleb Morgan as my first angel investor, contributing $700,000 and my own savings of $95,000. Skyline Elite Charter was born. I leased a small office at Liberty Ridge Airport, LRA. I gave notice at Pinnacle Dynamics and took the terrifying leap into entrepreneurship. The early days were brutal. Our first aircraft lease agreement fell through 3 days before signing when the owner received a better offer from a competitor. I learned a competitor had quietly suggested to the aircraft owner that my youth and gender made me a risky business partner. Banking issues delayed our initial financing for nearly 6 weeks, forcing me to defer my own salary. I worked 18-hour days, sleeping on an uncomfortable couch in my office 3 or 4 nights a week to save commuting time and focus entirely on getting the business off the ground. My small team of 5 employees, most of whom had followed me from previous positions, agreed to reduced salaries in exchange for future equity, demonstrating a faith in my vision that still humbles me to this day. Just when we secured our first aircraft and launched service, our inaugural client canceled their contract after corporate restructuring eliminated their executive travel budget. We were suddenly left with aircraft payments and no revenue, coming dangerously close to bankruptcy before we had completed our first quarter. Our first real breakthrough came when the CEO of a mid-sized tech company needed urgent transportation after a major airline canceled his flight to a crucial meeting. Every other charter company in the region was booked, but we had availability. Despite our small operation, I personally oversaw every detail of the flight, from the catering that matched his dietary preferences to the ground transportation waiting at his destination. Not only did he make his meeting, but he signed a 6-month contract with us the following week. His social media post praising our white glove rescue mission caught the attention of several other executives in his network. Skyline Elite Charter delivered when the big names could not, he wrote. Personal service that makes you feel like their only client. That testimonial led to 3 new clients within a month. Independent Business Aviation Journal included us in their Innovators to Watch section, giving us credibility beyond our actual size and history. 8 months after launching, we added our second aircraft to the fleet, a mid-sized jet that could handle longer domestic routes. The day we completed that acquisition, I took my team out to celebrate our first month of operational profit. It was a modest profit, but worlds away from the financial cliff we had been dangling from just months earlier. Our initial office had been little more than a converted storage room with desks crammed together so tightly that chair movements required coordination. With growing business volume, we relocated to proper office space in the private terminal, gaining both functionality and perception benefits. Clients now stepped directly from luxury vehicles into our professionally designed reception area before boarding their aircraft. As the business stabilized, I focused on creating genuine competitive advantages. We developed proprietary booking software that provided real-time availability and transparent pricing, eliminating the industry's standard practice of opaque quotes and hidden fees. Our membership model gave frequent clients priority access and preferred rates without the massive expenditure of full aircraft ownership. We differentiated further by building a concierge department that handled not just the flight, but everything surrounding it. Ground transportation hotel arrangements, restaurant reservations, and special requests. We formed partnerships with luxury hotels and restaurants, negotiating preferred status for our clients. Our marketing focused relentlessly on 2 key messages: reliability and personalization. While competitors advertised luxury and opulence, we promised something more valuable to our target clients: precious time saved and personal attention to detail. As we grew, I began selectively recruiting experienced professionals from larger competitors, offering not just competitive compensation, but a company culture that valued innovation and personal initiative. A senior scheduler from a major charter operation, a maintenance director with 20 years of experience, a client services manager who had previously worked for a 5-star hotel group. Each strategic hire brought expertise and credibility, helping us expand from regional service to a national footprint. By the end of our second year, we were operating 5 aircraft and had established satellite offices in Houston and San Diego to support our growing client base. As the company expanded, my role evolved from hands-on operator to true CEO. I initially struggled with delegation, having been involved in every operational detail since inception. An executive coach helped me develop leadership skills appropriate to our growing organization, focusing on strategy and culture while empowering my team to handle day-to-day execution. I began accepting speaking engagements at industry events, initially terrified of public speaking, but recognizing the importance of building both the company brand and my personal credibility as a leader. My first presentation at the American Business Aviation Summit was delivered with shaking hands and a dry mouth. But the audience response was overwhelmingly positive. While building the company profile, I deliberately kept my own public image fairly low-key, focusing more on operational excellence than personal publicity. I developed signature service elements that clients came to associate with Skyline Elite Charter. Handwritten welcome notes, customized catering based on preference profiles we maintained, and post-flight follow-ups that demonstrated genuine attention to their experience. Above all, I worked to create a company culture that emphasized both excellence and empathy. We celebrated achievements publicly and addressed shortcomings privately. We promoted based on performance rather than politics. We created family-friendly policies that acknowledged our employees had lives outside work, something rarely seen in the demanding aviation industry. The company I was building stood in stark contrast to my parents' cutthroat consulting firm, where employee turnover was high and client relationships were transactional rather than relational. Perhaps this was my quiet rebellion against their values, creating a business that succeeded not despite treating people well, but because of it. By our 5th anniversary, Skyline Elite Charter had grown beyond my most optimistic projections. Our fleet had expanded to 12 jets, ranging from light jets for regional trips to heavy jets capable of international travel. We had offices in 5 major cities, and our staff had grown to over 60 full-time employees, plus a network of contract pilots and flight attendants. Our annual revenue had reached 9 figures with healthy profit margins that exceeded industry averages. The United Business Aviation Council awarded us their Service Excellence Award, and Executive Aviation Review featured our company in a cover story titled "The New Standard in Private Aviation." The crowning achievement of that year was purchasing our first company-owned aircraft rather than leasing a tangible asset that represented financial stability and growth potential. We moved our headquarters to a standalone building at the airport with our company logo prominently displayed, a far cry from the converted storage room where we had started. My personal financial situation had transformed alongside the company growth. After years of frugal living, I purchased a luxury condominium in downtown Harborview City with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. I finally paid off my student loans completely nearly 7 years after graduation. For the first time, I could afford occasional vacations, though I rarely took them, still driven by the same work ethic that had built the company. I established a modest investment portfolio with the help of a financial advisor focusing on long-term security rather than flashy returns. Remembering my own struggles to enter the aviation field, I created a small foundation providing scholarships and mentorship for young people interested in aviation careers. The Metro Business Journal included me in their Rising 40 Leaders list of successful entrepreneurs, featuring a professional photograph of me standing beside one of our aircraft. I still flew commercial occasionally when traveling for personal reasons, a practice that kept me grounded and in touch with the passenger experience from the other side. Meanwhile, my parents' consulting business had also expanded, opening international offices in Munich and Singapore. Their client roster included multinational corporations, and their reputation in business circles had never been stronger. They were featured regularly in business publications and invited to speak at prestigious conferences. Yet despite my objective success, the disconnect with my family remained painful. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that my mother had described me as the family disappointment at a social function. A Christmas card they sent to extended family mentioned my father's recent industry award and my mother's charity board appointment, followed by disappointing news about Ryan's career choices. At an industry conference where our paths unexpectedly crossed, I overheard my mother telling someone I worked at an airport, deliberately diminishing my role as founder and CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. When I invited my father to our company 5th anniversary celebration, he declined without offering an explanation. My cousin Emily later told me that at a family wedding, my parents had told relatives I was struggling financially, despite clear evidence to the contrary. These continued dismissals hurt deeply. Even as I rationally understood, they said more about my parents than about me or my achievements. I made periodic attempts at reconciliation, sending them our company newsletter, with my CEO letter highlighted, inviting them to our aircraft delivery ceremony, and sending congratulatory gifts when their firm won a prestigious industry award. I tried to maintain monthly phone calls, sharing news of business successes and press coverage. Each attempt was met with the same pattern of dismissal or backhanded acknowledgement. When I mentioned our company feature in Executive Aviation Review, my mother suggested I was probably exaggerating my role in the company to the journalists. When I shared news of our expansion to the West Coast, my father merely asked if I had considered selling the company to a real aviation business now that it had grown. The emotional impact of this continued rejection was significant despite my professional success. I began working with a therapist to process the complex feelings of accomplishment mixed with lingering inadequacy. She helped me recognize patterns of seeking parental approval that still influenced my decisions and emotional responses. "Your parents may never give you the validation you deserve," she told me during one particularly difficult session. "Can you find peace with that possibility while still acknowledging your own achievements?" I built a support network of close friends who became my chosen family, people who celebrated my successes without qualification and supported me through challenges without judgment. I developed mentor relationships with other industry leaders, particularly those who had succeeded in male-dominated fields. Journal writing became a therapeutic practice, allowing me to process feelings of inadequacy that occasionally surfaced despite objective evidence of my success. Meditation helped manage the stress of running a growing company while navigating complicated family dynamics. Through this emotional work, I gradually built resilience and self-validation that depended less on external approval, even from the parents whose opinion had once meant everything to me. I was learning slowly but steadily that my worth was not contingent on their recognition. The aviation industry, like many business communities, runs on information and relationships. News travels quickly through networks of pilots, executives, and service providers. It was through this informal intelligence network that I first learned about my parents' new client situation. Continental Prime, a European technology conglomerate with $60 billion in annual revenue, had selected Vance Strategy Group to handle their expansion into the American market. Their CEO, Adrian Schubert, was known within aviation circles for his interest in private travel solutions, having previously owned several aircraft through his company. The consulting contract was reportedly worth millions for my parents' firm, potentially their largest client engagement to date. At an industry reception, a colleague mentioned casually that the client was seeking comprehensive travel solutions for their executive team during the American expansion. "They are requesting proposals from several private aviation providers he mentioned might be worth looking into." 2 days later, our sales department received a formal request for proposal from Vance Strategy Group on behalf of Continental Prime. The request contained no indication that the consulting firm submitting it had any connection to me personally. It appeared to have been distributed to several private aviation companies as part of a standard competitive bidding process. When my director of sales brought the request to my attention, recognizing the Vance name, his expression was concerned. "Given your history with Vance Strategy Group, should we pass on this one?" he asked tactfully. "We have plenty of other prospects in the pipeline." I considered the question carefully. The professional response would be to recuse myself from the process due to the personal connection. The business opportunity was significant but not critical to our continued success. Yet something deeper motivated my decision. "No," I replied finally. "This is an opportunity to demonstrate our service excellence on its own merits. Please prepare our standard proposal package with additional emphasis on our international capabilities and concierge services." I did not reveal my connection to the staff handling the proposal, wanting their work to remain unbiased by personal considerations. Our team developed a comprehensive service package that exceeded the requirements while offering competitive value, presenting our company's strengths without specific tailoring based on my insider knowledge of the clients. 3 weeks later, we received notification that Skyline Elite Charter had been awarded the contract. The deciding factors cited were our transparent pricing model, comprehensive service package, and strong customer testimonials. There was no indication that anyone at Vance Strategy Group or Continental Prime had made the connection between the company and myself. The first scheduled service under the new contract was a high-profile flight transporting Adrian Schubert and his executive team, accompanied by my parents as their consultants, to an important meeting in Munich, Germany. The stakes were high for both companies. I made the decision to personally oversee the service delivery. We selected our newest and most luxurious aircraft, a recently acquired Bombardier Global 6500 with custom interior and state-of-the-art amenities. I personally inspected the aircraft preparation, checking every detail from the cleanliness of the lavatory to the thread count of the linens. Our client services team researched Adrian Schubert preferences based on information gathered from his previous private aviation usage. We learned he preferred specific Scottish single malt whiskey, enjoyed French press coffee rather than espresso, and appreciated classical music during boarding. His dietary preferences leaned toward protein-rich meals with minimal carbohydrates. We customized the catering accordingly, adding special touches beyond what the contract required. Handmade chocolates from a boutique German chocolatier as a nod to their destination. A selection of international newspapers delivered fresh the morning of the flight, and a gift bag containing high-end travel accessories. The ground transportation was arranged at both departure and arrival points, with luxury vehicles scheduled to meet the aircraft and drivers briefed on the itinerary and security protocols. We coordinated with the FBO in Munich Airport North Wing to ensure priority handling and expedited customs clearance upon arrival. As the day of the flight approached, I experienced increasing anxiety about the inevitable encounter with my parents. I scheduled an extra session with my therapist to prepare emotionally. "What is the worst-case scenario you are afraid of?" she asked. "That they will publicly undermine me in front of an important client," I admitted. "Or that they will act as if my business is some cute hobby rather than a serious enterprise." We role-played different potential scenarios and responses, focusing on maintaining professional composure regardless of provocation. She helped me develop specific phrases I could use if the interaction became uncomfortable and grounding techniques to manage anxiety in the moment. "Remember, you have built something substantial," she reminded me. "Nothing they say or do can take that away from you." I discussed the situation with my closest friend Alex, who had witnessed my journey from the beginning. He helped me prepare by playing my mother in various scenarios, some serious and some so exaggerated. We ended up laughing until tears came. "Just be the CEO you are every day," he advised. "Their opinions stopped being relevant the day you chose your own path." The night before the flight, I selected my outfit carefully, a tailored charcoal suit that projected professional authority without ostentation, accessorized with the subtle airplane cufflinks that had become something of a personal trademark among those who knew me well. I arrived at the terminal 3 hours before the scheduled departure, reviewing final preparations with the flight crew, catering staff, and ground team. We conducted a final inspection of the aircraft interior, verified the flight plan with the pilots, and confirmed the weather conditions along the route would be favorable. I gathered the service team for a brief meeting, explaining that this client represented significant expansion potential without mentioning my personal connection. "This is an opportunity to demonstrate why Skyline Elite Charter sets the standard in private aviation," I told them. "Let us show them what exceptional service truly means." As the scheduled arrival time approached, I positioned myself near the terminal entrance, outwardly calm, but inwardly rehearsing my professional greeting and steadying myself for whatever reaction might come. Through the glass doors, I could see the black executive Mercedes pulling up to the curb. The moment of truth had arrived. The executive car door opened, and my father emerged first, impeccably dressed in his signature navy suit with the gold tie pin he considered lucky for important meetings. My mother followed, elegant, as always, in a tailored, cream-colored suit and pearls. Jonas Keller, a tall man with silver hair and commanding presence, stepped out last, checking his phone, as my parents flanked him on either side. From my partially concealed position, I could observe them without being immediately noticed. My mother's posture was perfect as always, her practiced social smile firmly in place as she made small talk with Jonas Keller. My father carried his leather portfolio, the same one he had carried to important meetings for as long as I could remember. As they approached the entrance, Jonas Keller asked something I could not quite hear. My mother's response, however, carried clearly through the morning air. "Our son. He is just a disappointment, honestly. Walked away from the family business to work at an airport, if you can believe it. Such wasted potential. Jonas Keller looked thoughtful. My son did something similar. Became a wildlife photographer instead of joining our company. Took me years to appreciate he was following his passion. My mother's laugh was brittle. Well, I doubt taking airline reservations qualifies as a passion. They were steps away from the entrance now. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and stepped forward to meet them, extending my hand professionally. Good morning, Mr. Keller. Welcome to Skyline Elite Charter. I am Ryan Walker, CEO and founder. We are delighted to be handling your transportation today. The series of expressions that crossed my parents' faces would have been comical under different circumstances. First confusion, then shock, followed by something between horror and disbelief. My mother, hand holding a champagne welcome flute that our attendant had just offered, suddenly went slack. The crystal glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor of the terminal with a crash that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Jonas Keller glanced between my outstretched hand and my parents. Frozen expressions, his business acumen quickly connecting the dots. Walker, wait. This is your son, company, he asked, turning toward my parents. My father attempted recovery, his voice uncharacteristically flustered. Ah, yes. Well, Ryan has been involved with this service provider for some time now, a small operation he joined after college. Jonas Keller turned back to me, ignoring my father diminishment. Founder and CEO. Impressive. How long have you been operating? We are celebrating our 6th year in business, I replied, maintaining my professional demeanor despite the tension crackling in the air. We currently operate a fleet of 18 jets with offices in 6 cities across the United States. 18 jets. Jonas Keller raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. That is substantial, and you built this from the ground up. My mother's face had flushed a deep crimson. A staff member quickly appeared with a dustpan and brush, efficiently clearing away the broken glass while another brought a replacement champagne flute. I confirmed. Would you like to see the aircraft before we depart? Our Bombardier Global 6000 Apex is our newest addition to the fleet with a range that easily handles transatlantic flights and an interior designed for both productivity and comfort during long journeys. I would love that, Keller replied with genuine interest. He turned to my parents, whose composed facades had completely crumbled. You must be incredibly proud. Building a successful aviation company in this competitive market is quite an achievement. My father cleared his throat. Yes, of course. Ryan has always been determined. I smoothly transitioned the group toward the aircraft, walking slightly ahead with Keller, while my parents followed in uncomfortable silence. As we approached the plane, its polished exterior gleaming in the morning sun, I could see Keller taking in the Skyline Elite Charter logo prominently displayed. The boarding stairs were positioned with a red carpet extending to the tarmac, and the uniformed flight crew stood at attention beside the entrance. The lead flight attendant, Liam, greeted us warmly as we approached. Mr. Keller, welcome aboard. We have prepared the cabin according to your preferences, and your requested breakfast will be served once we reach cruising altitude. Is there anything special you would like before departure? Keller smiled, clearly pleased with the personalized service. This is already exceeding expectations. Thank you. I guided the group through the aircraft, highlighting the various features and amenities. The main cabin was configured with luxurious leather seating, exotic wood accents, and state-of-the-art communication systems. The aft section contained a private conference room and a separate sleeping area for long flights. Our connectivity systems allow for secure video conferencing and full internet capability throughout the flight. I explained the satellite phone system can reach anywhere in the world, and we have included adapters for international power requirements at your destination. Throughout the tour, Keller asked informed questions about the aircraft performance and service capabilities. While my parents remained uncharacteristically silent, my mother's eyes darted around the cabin, taking in the evident success of the company she had so recently dismissed. My father maintained a studied neutral expression, though I could see the muscle in his jaw working as he clenched his teeth. As the pre-flight preparations continued, the natural seating arrangement placed Keller and me across from each other, with my parents seated together on the opposite side of the cabin. This configuration created a visual separation that seemed to mirror the years of emotional distance between us. Once airborne, Keller immediately engaged me in business discussion, asking insightful questions about how I had built the company, the challenges of the private aviation market, and my vision for future expansion. The capital requirements in this industry must be substantial, he noted. How did you manage the initial financing? I started with a single angel investor and my personal savings, I explained. As we demonstrated consistent service excellence and financial discipline, we were able to secure additional investment rounds to fund our expansion. We have been profitable since our second year of operation. My parents listened silently, witnessing firsthand as their disappointing son discussed sophisticated business strategy with their most important client. Occasionally, my mother would attempt to redirect the conversation toward their consulting work, but Keller's interest remained firmly focused on the aviation business. The service model you have created is exactly what our executive team needs, Keller commented as the flight attendant served the carefully selected meal. The transparent pricing structure and membership benefits are particularly appealing compared to other providers we have used. My father finally found his voice. Aurora Global has always prioritized efficiency in executive travel. Our firm has recommended several aviation providers over the years. Keller nodded politely before turning back to me. How did you identify the market gap your company fills? Most established players have been using the same business model for decades. That was precisely the opportunity, I replied. While working in corporate aviation, I saw firsthand the frustrations executives experienced with traditional charter companies. Opaque pricing, inconsistent service, rigid scheduling. Our model addresses those pain points directly. The remainder of the flight continued in this vein, with Keller increasingly impressed by both the service and the business acumen behind it. My mother attempted damage control, suddenly claiming they had always supported Ryan's entrepreneurial spirit. A revision of history so dramatic I nearly choked on my water. My father, ever the strategic thinker, began positioning himself as a proud parent, making comments about how Walker men have always been determined and suggesting my business skills came from watching him negotiate deals throughout my childhood. I neither confirmed nor contradicted these sudden revisions to our family narrative, maintaining professional courtesy while inwardly marveling at the rapid adaptation. As we began our descent into Munich, Keller made his intentions clear. I would like to discuss expanding our contract to cover all of Aurora Global North American corporate travel, he said, and potentially explore options for our European operations as well. Your service model is exactly what we have been looking for. As we prepared for landing, I caught my mother staring at me with an expression I could not quite decipher. For the first time in my adult life, I saw something that might have been genuine respect in her eyes, though mixed with confusion and perhaps regret. The aircraft touched down smoothly at Munich Executive Airport, taxiing directly to the private aviation terminal where the ground transportation we had arranged was already waiting. As the passengers prepared to disembark, Keller shook my hand firmly. This was the most impressive private aviation experience I have had, he said. I look forward to a long relationship between our companies. He turned to my parents. You have an extraordinary son. His business acumen clearly runs in the family, though he has applied it in his own unique way. As Keller descended the stairs to the waiting vehicle, my parents lingered behind, clearly wanting to speak with me privately. The moment I had both anticipated and dreaded for years had finally arrived. After Keller departed in the waiting luxury sedan, the private terminal suddenly felt cavernous, with just the three of us standing there. For perhaps the first time in my life, my parents seemed at a loss for words. My mother broke the silence first, her voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "Ryan, why did you never tell us about the scope of your company?" "We had no idea. I tried, Mother, many times. I invited you to our company event, sent you our newsletters, called to share our milestones. You made it abundantly clear you were not interested." My father straightened his tie, visibly uncomfortable. "Well, now that we see the scale of your operation, perhaps we can help connect you with more clients from our network. Several of our associates could benefit from your services." The offer was so transparent in its sudden self-interest that I almost laughed. For years they had dismissed my career as insignificant, and now, seeing its success and influence, they wanted to position themselves as supporters and beneficiaries. "I appreciate the offer," I replied evenly. "But our client acquisition strategy is quite effective as it stands. We have a waiting list for our membership program and are actually becoming more selective about which clients we accept." My mother's expression shifted to one I recognized from childhood, the look she gave when recalculating her approach to get what she wanted. "We have always supported you, Ryan, even when we did not understand your choices. Family businesses can take different forms after all." "That is not how I remember the last 6 years," I said calmly. "You called me a disappointment less than 2 hours ago, Mother. To your client face." My father attempted to intervene. "In the heat of the moment, things are sometimes said that are not meant." "They were meant," I countered. "They have been meant for years. You have made your disapproval abundantly clear at every opportunity. You told our extended family I was struggling financially. You declined invitations to company milestones. You deliberately minimized my role when speaking to others." The years of accumulated hurt and frustration surfaced not in an emotional outburst, but in a calm recitation of facts they could not deny. For once, I was not seeking their approval or understanding. I was simply stating truth. I built this company without your support or connections. I would have welcomed your encouragement, but I did not need it to succeed. Moving forward, I am open to a more respectful relationship, but I will not pretend the past did not happen. My mother's eyes glistened with what might have been tears, though her pride would never allow them to fall. My father looked suddenly older, the confident demeanor that had intimidated me throughout childhood now diminished. "We should discuss this further when we return to Harborview City," he suggested. "Perhaps over dinner at a nice steakhouse?" "I will consider it," I replied, neither accepting nor rejecting the overture. "For now, I need to return to my team. We have another client flight departing in 3 hours." I walked away without seeking further resolution, leaving them standing in the terminal. For the first time in our relationship, I was the one setting the terms of engagement. The shift in power was not lost on any of us. The business ramifications of that encounter were substantial and immediate. Within a week, Jonas Keller signed an expanded contract with Skyline Elite Charter, tripling the scope of the original agreement to include all of Aurora Global North American corporate travel. More significantly, he began referring other executives in his network, resulting in 5 new major clients within the month. The connection to Walker Strategic Partners ironically benefited my parents' business as well. Their association with a cutting-edge aviation provider enhanced their image with clients seeking comprehensive business solutions. We maintained a strictly professional relationship in these overlapping business matters, with all communication handled through appropriate channels rather than personal contact. Our company expansion accelerated following this growth in our client base. We added 4 aircraft to our fleet within the next year, expanded our staff to over 80 employees, and opened 2 additional international offices. The profile of Skyline Elite Charter rose considerably in the industry, with regular mentions in business publications and invitations to speak at aviation conferences. When we purchased a building for our new headquarters, complete with training facilities and a client lounge, it represented not just business success, but personal vindication. The company name displayed prominently on the facade was visible to aircraft taking off and landing at the airport, a daily reminder of how far we had come from that converted storage room. Personally, the confrontation triggered a complex emotional process. In the weeks that followed, I experienced a range of feelings: vindication, lingering, hurt pride, and surprising moments of grief for the parental relationship I had never really had. My therapist helped me navigate these emotions, emphasizing that healing would be a process rather than an event. You can acknowledge the hurt they caused while still allowing the possibility of a changed relationship moving forward, she advised, but that change must come from both sides. I shared the full story with only my closest friends, those who had supported me through the years of struggle and doubt. Their celebration of this moment of recognition meant more to me than any belated parental approval ever could. "You did not just prove them wrong," Jason told me over dinner as we discussed the encounter. "You succeeded on your own terms, creating something they could never have imagined." The dynamics with my family entered a new phase following the confrontation. 3 weeks after returning from Munich, my parents invited me to dinner at their home, something that had not happened in nearly 5 years. The evening was awkward, but represented a first, tentative step toward a different kind of relationship. My mother, ever image-conscious, began mentioning my company to her friends, suddenly proud of her entrepreneurial son. My father, more subtly, began occasionally asking business questions that implied a new respect for my acumen. While I recognized these changes were at least partly motivated by self-interest and saving face, they also reflected a genuine recalibration of how they viewed me. That Christmas, I accepted their dinner invitation, the first holiday I had spent in their home since leaving for college. The conversation was still sometimes strained old patterns threatening to reassert themselves. But there were also moments of genuine connection that had been absent for most of my adult life. When my father asked my opinion on a business matter for the first time, the simple acknowledgement of my expertise felt more significant than the content of the question itself. When my mother showed a magazine featuring Skyline Elite Charter to her friend who stopped by for coffee, I glimpsed the parent-child pride that had been missing throughout my career. The relationship remained imperfect, likely always would be. Too much history existed to ever fully heal the wounds on either side. But we found a new equilibrium, a measured respect that, while not the warm family bond some might enjoy, represented significant progress from where we had been. The most profound impacts of this journey were the lessons it taught me about defining success on my own terms. I had built a company that reflected my values rather than those inherited from my parents. Skyline Elite Charter was known not just for exceptional service, but for ethical business practices, employee support, and community engagement. I used my platform to create opportunities for others, particularly those interested in aviation careers. The scholarship program expanded, supporting 12 students annually, with both funding and mentorship. I spoke at universities and industry events about authentic leadership and the importance of following genuine passions rather than predetermined paths. When a young person approached me after one such presentation, saying my story had given them courage to pursue their own aviation dreams, despite family pressure to choose a more suitable career, I recognized that my personal struggle had value beyond my own journey. The company continued to grow, but I became increasingly focused on building an organization that could thrive beyond my personal involvement. I developed a leadership team that shared my vision while bringing diverse perspectives and experiences. We created systems and culture that embodied our values at every level of the organization. In quiet moments of reflection, I came to understand that the very rejection that had once caused so much pain had actually been instrumental in forging my independence and resilience. Had my parents supported my initial aviation interest, I might have built a different life, perhaps one more dependent on their approval and connections. The difficult path had forced me to develop strengths I might otherwise never have discovered, connections I might never have made, and a clarity about my own values that came from having to define them in opposition to those I was raised with. I also developed compassion for my parents, recognizing that their rigid expectations came from their own limited understanding of success and happiness. Their inability to see beyond their predetermined vision reflected their own insecurities and fears as much as any deliberate unkindness. This understanding did not excuse their behavior, but helped me release the anger that had occasionally threatened to define our relationship. I could acknowledge their limitations without allowing those limitations to constrain my own life and choices. As Skyline Elite Charter entered its 8th year, we were preparing for our largest expansion, yet including our first European operations center. The company had grown beyond anything I had imagined. That day, I nervously presented my business plan to my first investor. The journey continues to evolve both professionally and personally. I have learned that success is not a destination, but an ongoing process of growth adjustment and occasionally spectacular moments of vindication. If you have ever felt underestimated or dismissed by those who should have supported you, remember that other people's limitations need not become your own. The path to proving your worth lies not in seeking their approval, but in building something that aligns with your own values and vision. Have you ever had to prove someone wrong about you? How did it feel when you finally succeeded on your own terms? Share your stories in the comments below. The argument was explosive, ending the way they always did, with my father's cold, final ultimatum. You will attend Randall University's School of Business as planned, or you can pay for college yourself. With no immediate financial power and knowing I could not cover the elite tuition on my own, I made the calculated retreat. I would comply, but the compliance would be temporary, a strategic phase in a larger game only I was playing. I accepted the offer from Randall University, but the son who enrolled was fundamentally different from the one they thought they had shaped. My college years were not a pursuit of their dream. They were a covert operation. Every finance course was not about corporate balance sheets for Walker Strategic Partners, but about potential funding models for my future aviation company. Every marketing class became a secret laboratory for developing the core service concept of an elite charter service. Economics principles were filtered entirely through the lens of supply chain logistics and transportation law. I chose electives meticulously. Logistics management, transportation, economics, international business regulations, all ostensibly sensible additions to a consulting track. But in reality, they were puzzle pieces I was assembling into an entirely different hidden picture. The true game changer arrived in my junior year in the form of Professor Richard Hayes. Before academia, he had spent 2 decades as an executive at a major international airline. After a guest lecture where I cornered him with highly specific questions about regulatory bottlenecks, our conversation stretched hours past dinner time. "You understand the aviation business model better than most industry veterans I know," he remarked, the curiosity in his eyes genuine, not judgmental. When I finally confessed my reality, the golden cage, the expectations, the ripped-up acceptance letters, he simply nodded, his expression thoughtful. Family expectations are powerful forces, Ryan, but ultimately you must live with the consequences of choices made to please others. Professor Richard Hayes became my silent mentor, guiding me toward industry contacts, specialized trade resources, and crucially helping me secure a summer internship with Summit Airways. I fed my parents the sanitized version, a corporate strategy position at a regional transportation company. It was technically true, if significantly understated, allowing me to absorb operational knowledge from the ground up without triggering a parental intervention. By graduation, I had the Randall University business degree summa cum laude, exactly what they had demanded. What they did not know was that I also possessed a small, invaluable network and a trove of specialized knowledge ready for deployment. The partnership agreement arrived in a heavy cream envelope 2 weeks after graduation. Junior partner track, substantial salary, the clear, well-trodden path to inheriting the throne. On the very same day, I received an offer from Summit Airways for an entry-level operations position. The salary was barely 1/3 of my parents' offer, the title insignificant in their world. I scheduled a dinner at their favorite upscale Harborview City restaurant, playing the part they expected one last time. They were already celebrating when I arrived, ordering champagne. To the newest Walker consultant, my father toasted, raising his glass, his expression radiant with relief and pride. I took a deep centering breath. I have accepted a position with Summit Airways in their operations department. The world stopped. My mother's champagne glass froze mid-air. You have done what? The ensuing hour was a brutal gauntlet of disbelief, calculated anger, emotional manipulation, and finally cold, devastating disappointment. My father accused me of being ungrateful. My mother suggested I was having a crisis, and they both hammered home the financial investment they had made. This is not a rejection of you. I tried to explain, my voice calm, despite the internal tremor. This is me following a career path that actually excites me. My father, ever dismissive, declared, "It is a phase. When you are tired of working at that glorified bus station, our door will be open." That weekend, I moved out of the guest house. My modest belongings went into my car while my mother watched silently, a rigid silhouette in the kitchen window. I found a small apartment near Liberty Ridge Airport, LRA, choosing a view of the runway's Freedom Ascent over the manicured, controlling perfection of Westport, Connecticut. The next 2 years were a baptism by fire in aviation operations. I started in customer service, learning every bottleneck and pressure point. While my former classmates were taking lavish vacations with banking bonuses, I worked overtime, volunteered for projects in maintenance and crew scheduling, and absorbed everything about flight efficiency and compliance. I lived frugally, building a savings account while my peers splurged on luxury cars. My parents' contact dwindled to strained holiday calls, where they vaguely referred to my job as finding myself or working at an airport. The turning point was chaos, a severe snowstorm that grounded all air traffic. I was the operations coordinator on duty when Caleb Morgan, the CEO of Pinnacle Dynamics, arrived desperate to reach a critical meeting in Houston. The terminal was bedlam, and everyone had told him impossible. I, however, saw a loophole. One of our jets needed to be ferried to Houston for scheduled maintenance. Navigating the bureaucratic and regulatory hurdles, I coordinated the maintenance, the flight crew, and secured the ferry flight approval. I personally escorted Caleb Morgan to the tarmac. "Most people just told me to wait," he observed, genuinely surprised. I remember the exact words I used. In aviation, impossible usually just means nobody has found the right regulation exception yet. 3 weeks later, Caleb Morgan offered me a position managing his Pinnacle Dynamics corporate flight division at nearly double my salary. It was my key to the world of private aviation client management acquisition crew economics, a 3-year master class I was paid to attend. I watched the inefficiencies traditional charter companies offered: opaque pricing, inconsistent service, and rigid scheduling, frustrating executives like Caleb Morgan. Meanwhile, many aircraft owners struggled to offset idle time costs. The idea crystallized Skyline Elite Charter, a transparent, flexible, customer-obsessed service that combined the reliability of ownership with the flexibility of charter. I spent 6 months refining the business plan, working on coffee and 4 hours of sleep, running projections until my eyes burned. I took the calculated risk and presented it to Caleb Morgan. "The aviation business eats startups for breakfast," he warned. "But this addresses real pain points." He became my angel investor, injecting $700,000 alongside my $95,000 in savings. Skyline Elite Charter was born. The early days were a blur of 18-hour shifts, sleeping on an uncomfortable office couch at Liberty Ridge Airport, LRA, and surviving bank delays that almost bankrupted us before the first quarter ended. A competitor quietly sabotaged our first lease deal, whispering doubts about my youth and gender. But my small team, a loyal core who followed me from previous roles, believed in the vision, agreeing to reduced salaries for future equity. Our first true break came when a tech CEO needed urgent transportation after a major cancellation. Every big name was booked. We had availability. I oversaw every detail: the customized catering, the perfect ground transport. He not only made his meeting, but signed a 6-month contract, and his subsequent social media praise, Skyline Elite Charter, delivered when the big names could not. Personal service that makes you feel like their only client put us on the map. We secured media mentions in Independent Business Aviation Journal, added our second jet, and celebrated our first modest operational profit. The converted storage room office was replaced with professional space in the private terminal. We built proprietary booking software for transparent pricing and created a concierge department that managed everything: hotels, restaurants, ground transport. We sold personalization and reliability, the two things the old industry had forgotten. I tried once more to bridge the chasm. I invited my parents to dinner, portfolio in hand, detailing the fleet size, the executive title, the team of 20 professionals. My mother glanced at the testimonials with a dismissive wave. A glorified secretary for a businessman. Hardly what Randall University prepared you for. My father merely reiterated. The offer to join the family business still stands. Ryan. That is real business experience. I walked away that night, the painful truth finally setting in. Their validation would never come. Their approval was conditional on me being a Walker Strategic Partners consultant, not an aviation CEO. If I was going to thrive, it had to be on my own terms without their stamp. The rebellion had to become my new normal. By our 5th anniversary, Skyline Elite Charter was thriving. Our fleet expanded to 12 jets, then 18 jets. We had satellite offices in Houston and San Diego. I was speaking at the American Business Aviation Summit, building credibility, not through my family name, but through operational excellence. We bought our first company-owned Bombardier Global 6000 Apex, a tangible asset that felt like vindication, and moved headquarters to a standalone building at the airport, our logo visible to every incoming flight. Personally, the transformation was complete. I bought a luxury condominium in Harborview City, overlooking the harbor, paid off my student loans, and established a foundation to mentor young people in aviation careers. I was featured in the Metro Business Journal Rising 40 Leaders list. Meanwhile, Walker Strategic Partners continued its global expansion into Munich and Singapore, but the familial disconnect remained an open wound. My mother called me the family disappointment at functions. My father declined invitations to company milestones. I realized their dismissal was not about my failure, but about their own limited definition of success. It was about their fear. I started working with a therapist, processing the complicated mix of pride and lingering inadequacy. She told me the hard truth. Your parents may never give you the validation you deserve. Can you find peace with that possibility? I had to build a self-worth independent of their gaze, leaning instead on my chosen family. My friend Jason, my team, my mentors. My journaling and meditation became survival tools. I learned that the very rejection that felt so cruel had been the fuel, the forging fire that made my independence and resilience absolute. Had they supported me, I might have built a smaller, softer life while still seeking their nod. The difficult path forced me to develop strengths I would never have otherwise found. My company, Skyline Elite Charter, succeeded because it reflected my own values: ethical practice, employee support, and personalization. A stark, quiet rebellion against the cutthroat transactional culture of Walker Strategic Partners. The news always travels in the aviation world. Through my network, I learned that Walker Strategic Partners had landed a massive client, Aurora Global, a European conglomerate with $60 billion in revenue, looking to expand into the United States. Their CEO, Jonas Keller, was known to favor private aviation. 2 days later, an RFP request for proposal for executive travel hit our sales director desk, submitted by Walker Strategic Partners. My sales director tactfully asked if we should pass given my history. I considered the professionalism of recusing myself, but a deeper primal motivation took over. No, I said, cold and focused. This is an opportunity to demonstrate our service excellence on its own merits. We won the contract 3 weeks later.